Yo, what's going on guys? Arekkz here and welcome to Splatoon 2. This is another game that I've been super looking forward to. If you guys know me, you know that my Nintendo Switch basically goes everywhere with me. So any chance to get another game to kind of build on the ever-growing roster of Switch titles is always a good thing. Now, for those of you guys that have never played Splatoon before, essentially it is a third-person shooter where you play as these characters known as Inklings. They can transition between squid and humanoid form, depending of course on the environment, and you then have your weapons at your disposal. Some of these are paint guns, some of them are rollers or brushes, and in things like multiplayer modes, then of course the kind of predominant mode has always been about spraying as much paint on the ground as possible to effectively kind of control the space and beat your opponent. Meanwhile in single player, you use all of your different abilities, your weapons to fight the evil Octarians, whilst navigating these like well-designed levels and fighting over the top bosses. In short, it is wacky, but it is a hell of a lot of fun. Nintendo seem to like doing this lately, or kind of just in general, taking like a popular genre and then putting their own sort of twist on it. You look at like Mario Kart for the racing genre, ARMS for the fighting genre, and of course Splatoon is now their entry into the shooter genre. But anyway, history lesson aside, what about Splatoon 2? Well, thanks to Nintendo, I actually have an early copy. I've had a chance to play through it this weekend, or play through some of the game this weekend, and today we're going to be speaking about Hero Mode, which is the single player component of the game. Of course, if you do enjoy this video, then a like would be super appreciated. Drop your comments down below, let me know if you guys are Splatoon fans, let me know if you guys are looking forward to this. Maybe some of you guys never played the original and you're thinking of jumping in Splatoon 2. Either way, let me know. It is also worth noting that I can only show you guys little snippets of gameplay today, and we're focusing on Hero Mode. I will of course later on be able to speak about things like multiplayer, the new kind of co-op mode, as well as some of the stuff you can do in Inkopolis. So all that stuff will be coming in due course, but for today, the focus is single player. Now, Hero Mode is actually a great introduction to the game. If you guys have never played Splatoon before, it'll do kind of a good job of running you through the controls, you know, like teaching you the ropes, showing you the different things you can do at a kind of step-by-step basis. You start through some pretty basic levels. It'll introduce you to the notion of, you know, painting the ground to then allow you to transition it a lot faster, of course in squid form, using that to climb walls, all the kind of basic stuff. But as you progress through, you're introduced to new enemy types, different puzzles, different ways to traverse the level, all the usual stuff you kind of expect from, say, like 3D platformer style tutorials. The actual premise for the single player mode is pretty simple, right? The concept is that the big Zapfish that powers Inkopolis has gone missing, so you then need to go into Hero Mode and find all the little mini Zapfish, and of course try and rescue it in the process. So you go into these different stages, and each stage has a Zapfish that you need to rescue, which is at the end of the level. So of course it's your job to then kind of work your way through the whole level, get to the end, rescue that, and then of course repeat the process. Each kind of hub world in Hero Mode has a number of Zapfish or mini Zapfish that you need to then go and rescue. And then of course once you've rescued all those fish, you can then fight the boss for that world before moving on to the next world. Now the bosses themselves are really awesome. There is so much character to the bosses. They are equally wacky. Some of them will of course require different weapons to defeat. You'll of course be equipped with those as you begin the match, but it also means you're going to have to think about the way to defeat them. So there's a certain degree of kind of puzzle solving to a little extent when you sort of initially go in to work out, you know, when you should be attacking, when you should be kind of like trying to dodge around, and of course ultimately it's about just sort of playing the waiting game, waiting for the appropriate opening, and then of course using whatever weapon you can to then dish out some damage so you can then of course attack the main tentacle. Now the hub world that you'll explore of course in the Hero Mode before of course you go into the actual specific stages. This is actually a really cool area. Of course, there are loads of different things to kind of discover here. There are balloons you can burst to get the little orange orbs, and of course other items you can find. And the actual kind of discovery process for getting into each of the stages is sort of like a little puzzle in itself, because the entrance is always invisible, so you need to then climb to the top of, you know, tall structures, or like, you know, work your way around areas to then be able to splat them with paint and then reveal the locations. So there's that element to it as well. Plus, the actual hub now has a cool shooting range, so you can actually test out some weapons. There's 3 different sort of destructible balloons, or like pylons, whatever you want to call them. They all have different degrees of strength, so you can of course use them to work out the power of your weapons. And speaking of weapons, this is also a great way to kind of like learn how some of the different ones behave, because of course outside of single player you can purchase weapons. You can of course go to the different stores in Inkopolis, and you can then go online and earn some points and earn some respect, and then of course buy better quality weapons. But before you do that, in single player, at the start of some of the stages, you'll be asked to test certain weapons for one of the NPCs. He says he wants to gather data. So you then get given the weapons. So this is kind of an introduction to, you'll start off with a basic weapon. You'll then go to like paint roller. And you go to things like, the sniper, the new splat dualies, which are my favourite weapon. These are basically SMGs, short range, high damage up close, and you can also dash whilst using them. But the cool thing is that once you get them, you can keep them in single player. So while you are in this hub, you can then swap between the weapons depending on which one you want to take into the next stage. Sometimes you're kind of forced to use a certain weapon, but other times you can then just use whatever it is you like. And you can then take those weapons, you can upgrade them with the orbs you've been collecting. So there is of course a degree of progression during that segment too. But anyway, weapons aside, moving on to talking about the actual stages, these are unbelievably awesome. Like, I genuinely love the level design in Splatoon. It is fantastic. Some of the early stages, as mentioned, they are pretty basic. So, it's a learn the ropes kind of thing. But once you get slightly further out and it starts linking everything together, there are loads of different ways to transition the level. Sometimes there are these kind of zip lines you'll go across. Other times you'll be shooting propellers to kind of move platforms, or you'll be spinning around these kind of drums to then bring these like bridges out. There are loads of different things like this, and generally speaking, as you play through the game, you'll be introduced to them one by one. But then, once you start getting to, World 3 and some of the kind of slightly more intricate things, and of course beyond that point as well, then it really starts to tie them all together, and you do get some pretty complex levels, but they are a hell of a lot of fun to actually take part in. And it actually kind of reminds me of back in Splatoon 1. I don't know if you guys been on the channel that long, but if you have, you may remember I did a speed run with the producer, Sakaguchi-san, and it just goes to show how much kind of replayability there are on the stages, because there's stuff to collect like everywhere you go. There's orbs that you use to kind of level up your weapons, plus there are some other items which I'm going to omit from this video for the time being, but basically there's things to collect. And for the completionists out there, chances are you'll probably miss them first time through, so you'll definitely want to kind of go back and revisit them. So there's definitely an element of kind of replayability on the stages, plus for those of you guys that actually want to try and do them quickly and efficiently, then you'll always learn as you kind of revisit areas. There are kind of shortcuts or ways you can skip past things. So all of that stuff together, like combined with the actual kind of like really awesome level design, just makes it a pleasure to kind of play through every single stage. And even though you're kind of fundamentally doing the same thing, you're splatting paint, you're taking out the enemies, every single stage just feels like different in its own right, from like the setting and the colours and the tone. Some levels are like really, really bright and kind of like vibrant colours, some levels are darker, but regardless, every stage feels unique, feels like it kind of brings something to the table. I actually always get this kind of distinct Super Mario Sunshine vibe whenever I'm playing Splatoon. I know it's probably partly because of the paint, but also partly, especially when you're in some of those like really bright levels, it just brings back those kind of like super happy kind of sunshine memories. The other nice thing, and this is of course one for those of you guys that are perhaps new to the series, stages in Splatoon don't take that long to complete. Most of them you'll do in, 5 minutes unless you're exploring, maybe sort of 5-10 minutes if you're kind of like really going around trying to find every single tiny thing. Point is, they're not long stages, so you can kind of jump into a hub world, hop through a few stages if you're busy. If you're in the middle of stuff, or you're traveling, then of course you can just play a couple on the go, and then just come back to it as it is. So it's super accessible in that light. And speaking of course playing on the go, there is, for the first time, the handheld mode, because of course Splatoon 1, being on Wii U, we didn't necessarily have that. I mean, obviously there was the Wii U gamepad, but you can actually take Splatoon with you now. So being able to play in handheld mode, the game looks fantastic. I mean, on the main screen, it looks nice anyway, vibrant colours, just looks really, really nice running in 1080. However, on the handheld mode, of course running in 720, it just looks really crisp on the screen, so it is great to be able to play it on the go. It controls really well. The other nice thing as well is that in the actual settings menu, you can control your sensitivity independently between docked mode and portable mode. So if you like a different sensitivity on the Joy-Cons to say the Pro Controller, then of course you can swap that depending on how you are playing the game. But for the time being, that is a very quick look at some of the stuff you can get up to in Hero Mode. Now, of course, if you guys have seen the Direct or you know anything about Splatoon, there is a whole load more out there. There's the multiplayer stuff, there's the new Salmon Run co-op mode, there's, of course, all the stuff you can do in Inkopolis, the amiibo support, all that stuff, and you might have seen some of it in the most recent Nintendo Direct. But for the time being, today's focus was, of course, on Hero Mode. I will at some point soon be able to speak about some of the other stuff, so do stay tuned if you want to see more from Splatoon. And of course, once we get close to launch, hopefully I can start live streaming, start diving into some of that multiplayer, and really showing you guys what you can get up to in this game. But for the time being, that's a look at it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'm also running a giveaway at the moment, so if you guys haven't seen my recent videos, then I've got a giveaway for some HyperX goodies, a headset, a mouse, and a product that's going to be announced very soon, so I'll leave a link to that in the description box down below. But until then, thanks for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.